My guest today is my good friend Antoine Leboyer. He's the managing director of the Venture Lab for Software and Artificial Intelligence at the Technical University of Munich. Antoine is not only an excellent mentor and teacher to younger entrepreneurs today, but he has also been a very successful entrepreneur himself, building a software company, selling it eventually. He's an investor, he's a keynote speaker, and he lives and breathes startups. That's his thing. The enthusiasm he brings to the table is electric. He wants so badly for those young entrepreneurs to succeed, and he knows what it takes. He's seen it hundreds of times, and so he is a great partner to talk to about what is entrepreneurial excellence, what does it take to be an excellent founder, to be in the top 1%, what makes an amazing startup, and we talk a lot about artificial intelligence and how that really is necessary for business excellence today, and so many examples he brings to the conversation where you just see, okay, this is how it's actually leveraged in businesses today. So please enjoy this conversation with my good friend Antoine. By the way, what did you like about Flora's startup? Like, why are you recommending it?
I like the fact that when they started, they had a sort of very broad horizontal solution. And I like the steps and the way they suddenly realized that they had to focus on one segment, found the segment, exploited it, stayed focused. I like the team. I like both the three guys which have started this. I also like the fact that they step back. Also the fact that they are both nice people as entrepreneurs, but as human beings. I think they are really wonderful. I also like the fact that Flora has a wonderful sense of humor, which is very important for founders.
How nice can you be as a founder? You know, like, is there, like in sports, for example, there's like, you can be too nice, kind of. It's easier if you're not that nice. How do you see that about startups?
So first, I'm going to quote the very famous "Do as I say, not as I do." It's difficult. I have seen some founders who are very control freak and who have a lot of difficulty delegating. I used to work with one guy who is really a guy who's got IQ of 200, work ethic, which is unbelievable. And he was never able to actually get a team that would stay working with him. Mm-hmm. So you have to find the balance of, having a certain direction, a certain spine, but you don't want to be going to the extreme. And I've seen guys going to the extreme and losing their team. Ultimately, and this is something that is really important, the founders that we work with at the Venture Lab, they come from university for the big majority of them. And they don't have the experience of having had teams to manage, employee training in big companies where you learn how to move from being a professional to a manager. And so they have to learn these things on the go. And some guys have to learn. Some guys get it. So, some guys are able to quickly get it. But most of them, they have to learn as they move forward. And it's one thing that I've seen. I have one founder that I've worked with. 3 years ago, the founder was 17, which tells you that now he's reached the unbelievably old age of 20. And he's got about 25 people working for him, which is quite unbelievable. I remember that 3 years ago, he actually called me and he wanted to discuss how to select people, how to get and organize work around them. And he had to, he realized that this was not as simple as being a wonderful coder by himself. So we discussed about these things and he did not get it right from day one. But now he's actually getting it right in a much more consistent way. So you need to have a direction. You need to be nice because ultimately you can't keep people and so on. But you need to learn how to select the right people, how to delegate, how to keep people motivated, how to keep people aligned. I don't know if it would be something that you could associate with being nice, because you need to keep a direction, but the age of the dictators or the solo guys is behind us. After all, you got to think, you want people that are going to be working hard, that want to enjoy what they are doing, so you can't dictate. I also like classical music, as you and I know, and there used to be a time when the conductors would be absolute autocrats who would shout to the orchestra, who probably would be musicians as skilled as they are. This is gone. The way these guys now are working is that they are in front of amazing musician, and what they have to do is to bring the best of them, but as a group. And there are a lot of similarities. So you got to be nice, but you need to make sure you don't forget that you got a direction.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that it's that the system, kind of balances this out. Like if you have to be human, nice, and everything to make it all work, but what comes to mind is the examples of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk or something, where everybody says they're very hard on their employees. What do you think about that in relation to what you just said?
Well, so I may be biased, but there's one that I have huge admiration for, and one where I used to have a lot of admiration for. So maybe I wouldn't put both of them in the same sentence. The first thing that is interesting is that when you look at Steve Jobs, he actually didn't work alone. If you read the books, if you read the famous Walter Isaacson book, Jobs worked with Wozniak. There was Mike Markula, who was also part of the team. Of course, he was unbelievably instrumental. People may not remember him because at some stage he left, but it was actually a real team that started. Yes, Jobs wanted to be employee number one and all what comes with this, but he was really able to keep a team, to select and assemble a fabulous team. When I read the book that the same writer Walter Isaacson did about Musk, I didn't get a feeling this was the same thing. In other words, I would say that Musk is someone that seems, and again, I don't know anything, but seems unbelievably hard-driven, has an IQ of probably 1,000 with all what it means, but I don't see him in the same vein as Jobs, who has been able to assemble a team, a real team, and keep people. Think about it. Jobs passed away. He was able to give the baton to someone named Tim Cook, and Tim Cook has given to Apple shareholders one of the biggest single increase in shareholder value that any CEO has been doing. It's something which is unbelievable. So you have this feeling that people like these are one person who are unbelievably charismatic and so on. Yes, they are charismatic, but they're not one person, and they assemble fabulous teams. And the same is true with founders. The very good founders we work with, they actually have a team. We always, when we see a team come and want to apply to the venture lab, we look at number of characteristics. But one thing that we do right now, and we are very strict now about this, is that we don't want solo founders. Being a solo founder is a sign that something is not quite right. It could be that you don't have any friends. It could be that you haven't been able to convince other people that this is an opportunity worth pursuing. So when we meet solo founders, we are very strict that this is the first thing that we'll tell them. Please come back when you have people that work with you. I also want to add something. These days, there's a big competition on talent. So I have seen teams that did not quite work, probably because the opportunity was not there, probably because the founder was not the right guy. I can tell you, if the guys work for the founders, leave and have capabilities and talent, they will find something immediately. And this is the nature of the market for talented people. So I don't know if you got to be nice, but you got to select the right people, and you got to make sure that they feel happy about what they are doing, so that they stay, they contribute, and they become real co-founders.
Yeah, such a good point. We talked so much about this point, having a co-founder, and I really personally had to grow into it. I come from a single player sport, even though there's a team aspect to it. And so I think the natural state is to first be on your own, but there's nothing. You just have to partner up with people, because that's the game, as you explained it. It's about, can you find people? Can you get them behind your idea? And if that's the game, solo founding makes no sense.
It's interesting because in my company, I was very, very fortunate to assemble a very, very strong team. I've kept very good relation with each of the guys that worked for me, and there was a wonderful alignment. I don't want to say co-founders because the structure was not exactly the same, but each of the guys were, they were very good, but they could work with the other. They also knew, how to listen to me and not to listen to me. They knew when I was pushing. We had a wonderful type of relation. And, now I live in Munich, but then I go from time to time in Geneva. And we always have lunch, and I know what's happening to each of them. We kept a relation because there was a wonderful work relation. And when things were difficult, and as you know, it always happens that things are difficult, this is where the quality of the team, the cohesion comes. And this is something that is really great. So I want to come back to Flora, which I mentioned. I like the team. I feel the team is really great. I like the fact that they can talk to each other when something is not quite there. I feel that this is a great team. I also have another team that I've worked with, which maybe we'll mention later, which is a team called Happy Robot. And Happy Robot, just to be clear, is the most successful startup that has come out of the Venture Lab. Right from day one, I had a feeling that the founder, whose name is Pablo, has some of these qualities. There was enthusiasm, but he was a doer, and he got people around him very early on that clearly were people who were aligned, of course, being themselves, having different opinions, discussing them, and then getting the stuff done as one team. So these things are really important, and now we see this really well. I think this is something that after 4.5 years at the Venture Lab and having seen 100+ teams, that's the first thing which I look at.
Yeah. You're such a good person to talk to, because you just mentioned you've seen so many. So what can you elaborate? What separates the top 1% startups from the rest? Like, what happens there? What comes together? I think you mentioned already a couple of things, but what have you seen? If you're an investor, but also if you're someone that wants to be a great founder and start a great startup, what's the magic sauce there?
I wish I knew 100% with 100% certainty was the magic sauce.
Yeah.
But there are a few things that I look for. But if you want to really focus on the 1%, there's one capability which I really value. And I would say this is acting fast. I don't want to say, doing things in a way which is rushed, but acting fast. And when you think of these founders who come from university, have got to learn so many things and so many new things that they haven't done before. So we spoke about recruitment, we spoke about alignment. And when you think of all the responsibilities that founders have got to tackle, there's a huge amount of them. It could be, recruiting, developing, talking to customers, closing accounts, developing a brand, a lot of these things. What I have seen is that the really good founders go very fast in learning. And I want to give you a couple of stories. So maybe a month ago, we've worked with founders who want to develop AI-powered tools for these billboards which exist in the US, which are now outside billboards. They are not ads which could be on your phone or ads which could be on your mobile. They are really old style ads. Instead of having static ones, they believe they can use AI to tailor them. So I don't know the domain. I thought the team was made of good guys, but I was not 100% clear on the business on which they were. What we do now at the Venture Lab is that we are developing cohort system. We take 6 teams and we want to see them every month. We want to discuss where they are, but we want also to expose and discuss what are the problems and what they will do. And this team is currently trying to apply to Y Combinator, where you have to do a video which explain what you do. And video hard, they don't lie, they stay. In 1 minute you got to be crisp. So when the guy exposed what they wanted to do, the other teams, their peers, did not fully get it, and they got a bit of pushback. And then they show the video, and I'm going to be quoting one of the 5 members, who basically says something which is really tough. The guy says, "I thought it was going to be worse." And the guy who's there gobbles everything. We usually, after we create a WhatsApp group where the teams continue talking, we met on Friday, and on Saturday at 8 o'clock there was already a new outline of the new video. And you know what? Of course, the guy will do pivoting. They will have to do many discussion and so on. But the guy understood there was something that was improvable, and they acted on it. And I think these guys who do this like this, they are guys which ultimately will be good guys. They don't come perfect from day one, but they improve and they go fast. I have another example which I thought was very striking, again with Pablo from Happy Robot. His initial business was something which was technically very, very strong, but one of the challenges that he had to understand what was the value, which type of customers would use this new technology. And one thing that we try to encourage at the Venture Lab founders to do is to develop inbound marketing techniques, use LinkedIn or use social media, not to try to push an idea, but to try to get to people to come to you. And with the advent of generative AI, we are even doing what used to be known as ideation or concept design thinking by asking questions to ChatGPT and or to Gemini or to an AI system. And so what we do with Pablo is that we sit down and we start asking ChatGPT what would be the typical verticals which could be interested in the technology that does X, Y, and Z, keeping in mind that normally you would do it in a different way. And ChatGPT selects 3 verticals. And I remember the second one was one that we had not anticipated, which was oil and gas. So we asked for oil and gas if it would be possible to have 3 key applications which would be with a high return over investment, which would be enabled with this sort of technology. And then we ask, and it comes, and then we ask ChatGPT, so make something like a LinkedIn post that we could use to generate inbound marketing interest. And 2 days after the post is online, Pablo has done a little video and little pictures to make this attractive and so on. And 2 weeks after, he's got 3 demo with 3 companies, blue chip companies, who never heard of him. And what I like is that the guy goes fast. By opposition, I once did a presentation to students about how you pitch to VCs. And I usually ask students to come with a 3-minute pitch so that we can see how to improve an existing pitch. I always take someone who's got good content, but things are a little green, if you want. And I do this with a great team. And then I see them a month after, and the pitch deck has not changed. And I told them, guys, this is probably the biggest warning signal that I can say to everyone, to anyone that I work with. You should have taken 30 minutes after you and I discussed, and it was fresh in your head what you could do, and you should have modified your pitch immediately. So guys which are into this 1%, they realize they don't get everything right from the first draft. They are not perfect from the first, the first moment, but they understand why and they go fast.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, I'm sure that it was the same thing when you played golf.
Is that kind of a 80-20 mentality, or would you not put it in the same bucket here?
Difficult to. I wouldn't put it on the same bucket because most of the students that I work with, they come from German universities. you know what I mean. Of course, it has got to be perfect.
Yeah.
So I have to fight with them because a big amount of them exhibit two characteristics. First, they only want to come and show their product when they believe that this is, a version 1 which is perfect. And I used to be in software. The joke in my company is that we would sit down for the product review, and I would start by saying, "Okay, we ship." And of course, everyone would say, "Okay, Antoine, we know you. Let's review what this is." But there's always a tendency to try to only ship when you believe that you're perfect. It's even worse. It was something I had to fight in my company, but I had to push this even more with the teams. The other thing that I see, which is even more important, is the following. Teams don't communicate to the outside world. Mm-hmm. So Bernhard, I'm really happy that I've introduced you to the incubator, that now you are actually pushing the team and teaching them how to get their stories out. But this is something that teams need to realize. They are good guys. They are working on things which are very current and very new. I can give you an example. There is a startup which has been which has been developing AI tutoring ability for students. It's a team which is actually sponsored, which has the endorsement of the TUM faculty. The professor who is helping this is Professor Alexander Preschner, and he's one of the professors who actually convinced me to come here. We've stayed very, very close. He's outstanding, and he's been working with this team to create an AI tutoring tool called OneTutor, and it's really important because it came from it's not replacing professors. It's realizing there's not enough tutor and that it's something which is really important. Initially, they were not seeing the value and importance of communicating. They come to these meetings where they meet their peers, just like the other guys, and suddenly they realize that the other guys are actually starting to communicate and it works well. So fast forward, they actually have probably 1,000. They had. When we spoke with them, I think that in this monthly meeting they had something like 50 LinkedIn followers. Now they've posted regularly. They got 1,500. They've been invited to a podcast, and I actually sent some information on what they are doing to the Süddeutsche Zeitung, who say this is a great story. We need to interview them. Yeah, and so it's an example of guys who have got great technology. But also have a great story to tell and don't need to wait that they are unbelievably advanced and that the tech has been proven to start talking about it. So these two things are important. And you've stepped in at the incubator. I remember Ivan, who runs the incubator, calling me and saying, "This is what our startup are needing."
Yeah, for sure. If I can touch on that, so I think it. With the event of social media and all this, it just has changed. So it used to be probably you have the product, then you worry about distribution, right? Okay, I create the product, I go out distribution, marketing machine, try to get in the newspapers, try to get in the media and all that. Now we have social media, and so we see it flipping around. You start with distribution, you build a community. You build already your distribution because distribution is the hard thing these days. Like getting the attention of people is the hard thing. Like having a product, if your product is crazy good, okay, but otherwise we have a global marketplace. There's a lot of products, right? Like I don't have as a customer, I don't have the problem to find a shoe. Like the question is which one? Like which one of the thousands I'm gonna pick, and that's distribution. People, they've built the story around success, excellence, whatever, then I have to have this Nike shoe.
Look, what you're describing is the importance of branding, and branding is not something that can necessarily only apply to big brands, companies with huge marketing budget, and so on. If you take the example we spoke about Flora in the beginning, not necessarily because she was on purpose trying to achieve having brands. She actually has been to many conferences, and many people actually know her because she's a woman founder, because she has a great story, because the story that she speaks when she described how she started ZamAI, which is a wonderful story about members in her family, resonates with people. And it is unbelievably important to learn how to do this. It's very interesting because if you go to YouTube, you can see early Steve Jobs interviews, and you can see that he was trying to look for his voice and his style. So sometime the future Steve Jobs start arriving, but he definitely understood that he was selling to consumer. He was really pushing the values. Branding is about values very early on. So the element of aesthetics, which are a thing that we've all learned to appreciate because of what he's been doing, these things come in very early. And it's very important. But he did this on TV because this was the media of the time. These days, successful startup cannot be successful if they don't know how to harness the power of social media. And it's something that is really, unbelievably important. You need to build a community. So the community could be on Instagram or other social media, which, by the way, I don't know, I'm not in the age category, but which are really important. If you're in the consumer business, if you're into the developer communities, you need to have a Discord channel and develop and communicate regularly. And if you are, which is probably the majority of the startup that we work with at the university in the B2B space, you need to be strong in LinkedIn. And you don't do this from day one. You do this with consistency, with values. I've said to every founders, don't put pictures of your vacation. No one cares. It's the wrong place. You need to educate things and have interesting content. And we push the founders to develop these capabilities, just like we push them to develop, to have good product and to be able to have the right pricing and develop the right distribution and the right packaging, because it's an unbelievably important, essential element.
Yeah, for sure. And so what I heard recently, I mean, obviously personal branding and branding, that's my thing. But what I really liked is, so this teacher of mine, she said, if you have a brand, if you have a personal brand or a brand, like people already know and trust you. And from there, you only have to explain the problem and how you solve it. Like you've done half of the work, maybe three-fourths already. Because if you don't have a brand, you have to convince the people of you, your company, and your product. So there's so much magic in there. Like if I already trust you, if I think you're great, I know your story, then you say, hey, I got this product. Like, okay, what does it do? Oh, this is amazing. Sale. Like, it's such a shortcut.
I think that the issue with brand, you mentioned both personal branding and company branding. So what really works is when you have alignment. And if you take the example once again of Apple, and I feel this is a story in brand alignment. The brand is very strong, but all the people who work and which we hear, maybe into the time of Steve Jobs, the time of Tim Cook today, you can see that they have alignment on what is the brand. So you have we trust these guys. I know that these days they are being a little bit tickled on what they do on AI, but which doesn't surprise me, because what is AI and because of what they do. But the alignment of the brand is very, very strong, and we trust these guys. Can I come back to another story about classical music? So I've met a hero of mine who is the chief conductor of the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra, Sir Simon Rattle. And I've spoken with him, and when I was studying at Imperial College, I was recommended to hear this young, flashy, brilliant conductor. And what I did is that I booked a ticket in this London concert hall where you can sit in the choir when there's no choir singing. So I actually saw him conduct, and I came back and I felt that I'd been given a personal master class. I thought the work was good, but then I discovered that I'd underestimated the work, and I came back realizing it was a much, much better work. And what I told Sir Simon, who was really a wonderful guy, is that after I trusted him. And this is exactly what you said. So when he came and we started playing a number of composers, which were modern composers that I never heard of, I trusted the guy. I'd been exposed to, in a way, what he could be doing with a work that I thought I knew. And I said, okay, this guy is good. He knows what he's doing. I trust him because he clearly knows much better than what I could learn about these things. And so the trust is established. I think this is the same thing with the good founders.
Yeah.
I think that the trust has got to be there. And it's always, it's also about values. The people have got values. You can't come and be a pure scientist. You got to show the value. And if you take the example of Flora, I think that what she described about the importance of inclusion leading to the idea of what Zoom is doing is something which is very strong. And there is huge alignment in the product, the values, and the person.
100%. And I mean, we talk a lot about fundraising and there especially, I mean, if you know the person, if you know stories about them, it's just a different conversation in the fundraising process. And like we had those funny stories, right? I posted about a wallet that I almost lost.
The very famous Bernhard Neumann wallet story.
Exactly. And so everybody, I was on radio afterwards, but everyone knew it. So I posted about helping my dad with AI. We talked about it. I talked to 3 other people. And so just the power of telling stories, of getting out there, and then it's a different conversation that you will have.
Can we stay on this is just a minute, especially when it comes to doing a pitch to a VC. If you have 5 startups and you have been doing 3 unicorns and so on, you call a VC and you say, I want this amount, so are you in or not? And that's all. That happens to a very, very small number of people. We have one professor who is the former CTO of Synthesia at the university, who's proven to everyone how unbelievably good he is. And he was one of the academic director of the venture lab, and he has another project, and he's been raising significant amount of money because of the fact that he's in this category and he's an outstanding founder who's proven his worth already. But for the majority of the people who are raising fundings and the students, they are doing this for the first time. So what is the biggest challenge they have? They need to establish that they have credibility. And some guys come in and start pitching that, there's a big problem, the AI is going to be important, global warming is happening, and that's not credible. And that's, VCs basically stop listening after 30 seconds. What works is genuine storytelling. So once again, best example I could say is that I work with a team which is developing synthetic data for medical images. It's a startup called River.ai. Wonderful guys. And the first time that they came to make a pitch, they had a pitch which was like, AI is very important and so on. And it felt boring. No interest. So we discussed, and my question to them was how they came to realize that this was something that was a problem. And suddenly they were very different people. Yeah. They said that all of them during a summer job, they were in different places, different companies, and they were all stuck on the same problem, which is that, you need to have compliant, the ability to have the green light from someone from a compliance office to be able to use all these great techniques. And they realized that they had a problem. They actually spoke to their professor and realized that a lot of people had a problem. And then they thought of an idea on how to solve this. That's a great story. You are saying, I know to identify issues. I know to step back and to validate if this is a one-off or something which is a big market, and I know how to solve it.
Yeah.
That's the ideal startup pitch. And by the way, they've raised funding and they are doing well, and this is an outstanding team. If you are not the world expert on a number of technologies, and if you haven't created 5 unicorns and so on, be yourself, be genuine, and tell a story that prove that you're credible.
And to add on this, in working with clients or companies, create your origin story, write it down. And these days it's so easy with AI, right? Like before, I think it was a tedious process, but right now, okay, here's what you do. You take ChatGPT or anything recording a device, ChatGPT transcribes it really nicely. You just start talking. You start talking how it was, why did you do it? Why did you start? What was the thoughts? What was the problems you had, the obstacles, and so on. And you just talk in there for 30 minutes, doesn't matter. Then you transcribe it, and then you feed it to AI and say, hey, I want to craft the origin story out of this. Please structure it. You can add to the prompt. Maybe you want to make it a hero's journey. All this, not very complicated. At the end, you have this 1-page document. That's your story. And it's really, it takes you 2 hours. It takes you an hour.
We spoke about speed and going fast. So in the Software AI Venture Lab team, there are 2 great guys, and I'm going to quote their names because it's a pleasure working with them, Bastian Berger and Jan Bittendorf. And they have made a class which has been twice a year at the DLD about how AI tools can help entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And what they show is that when you got to do early market analysis, hypothesis formulation, so the classic steps that we recommend to entrepreneurs, and you don't have a wealth of people to interview, you don't know how to start, AI can actually really help you in getting these first steps. So remember, it's always AI, it's statistical, you need to validate, but at least you can get started to try to facilitate and structure the founder's journey. So even for being entrepreneur, AI is changing the rules, and the good startup that we work with are using AI as a tool themselves, not only developing tools which use AI mm-hmm. for the business they want to be in, but they incorporate this into their own the tool that they use, and they get speed and flexibility thanks to that.
Yeah,
I found this really impressive. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, that's also my focus right now. So you made already the perfect shift. I wanted to talk about this a little bit. So because you, I think, like few other people, are really at the forefront of AI, being how like startups try to create products around it or with it, and also maybe leverage it for their own productivity. What do you see there going on? Like, like obviously always from the outside you think, okay, how real is this already? Are they really building now all those solutions with AI, or is it more algorithmic and they call it AI? Everything gets a little AI stamped these days. What's your sense of this right now? Because you see it on the ground.
It's absolutely everywhere. So it's a real reality. And when you think of it, we are barely starting. Okay, we are really the beginning. So one thing which is really amazing with AI is not only the fact that it's a major revolution, but if you compare this with other revolutions that you and I have known, mobile internet and so on, I don't remember any technology which had so fast such a big user adoption. In a way, this is the one thing that I find amazing. And I was discussing with Harvard Business School classmate who is running a consultancy called Best Practice AI, and I'm going to quote his story and what he explained, because I think this is really something that is very revealing. Steve Jobs announced the iPhone 2007. Then you got to wait 12 to 18 months to be able to have your hand on a headset. Then you probably have to wait 1 year for the networks to develop data capabilities which allow you to do something beyond this. And then you got to wait for someone to develop Uber.
Mm.
So it takes, 2 to 3 years in between the time of the announcement and the time when you realize that this is something which is really a major, major shift.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of AI, because of having had the idea of putting an old, outdated model, which is the ChatGPT 3.5, made available to everyone, what you have is that you got the ability to make a technology available to everyone who opens a browser. So everyone could, at the time of ChatGPT, open a browser, ask a question, and get all this unbelievable machine to produce something. It wasn't perfect. I had a lot of friends telling me when I was enthusiastically pushing them to try these, friends and family mostly, to say, oh, they make a mistake, it's not very clear, and so on, instead of them realizing that they were able, in 1 second, to get an unbelievably complex technology to produce a result.
Mm.
So what you have as a consequence, you have the application which was able to get the fastest 200 million user compared to all the other application. I think it was 2.5 weeks, which is crazy.
Mm.
I understand that they have announced that they have now 10 billion annual recurring revenue.
Mm.
It was announced last week, 10 billion annual recurring revenue. And the number of people who are using this is 800 million daily.
Yeah.
So the speed of adoption is unbelievable. What does this mean for founders? It means that they don't have to convince people that this is going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you go and you say you need to go to mobile, you need to go develop something on the internet and develop something which could be an e-commerce website for your company, people says, really, do you think? No, this is different. Everyone has touched it. Everyone knows it's important. And this is why, this is where we're only starting.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, it's also unbelievably powerful, but that was, mobile was very powerful. Internet was very powerful. So this is the one thing which I think is the biggest single differentiation compared to other revolution. Everyone has looked at it. You don't need to sell or to convince people that AI is important for them.
Yeah, really good. So I would be interested in how do the startups you work with, how do they think with AI, because you've seen startups trying to develop products or all this before AI, and now they have this technology. How do they think, okay, this is the problem I want to solve, and now I bring AI into it, or how do they approach this? Let's bring AI into everything we do or everything we ship.
There's something which is staying the same, especially for software AI startup. And I'm once again giving the full title of my venture lab, which is that if you have a startup, the solution is 49% of the success, 51% is finding a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so the startup which do really, really well, they are startups which not only develop good code and package it and push it and test it the right way, but there are those which can really identify a significant problem, which is big enough, which is not a one-off, and where they can give and apply deploy a number of solutions. So this is staying the same. There's huge amount of ability to develop a number of new startup on AI. But the biggest challenge, and so in other words, the challenge for them remain the same, which is a fun problem. The specific challenge that they are facing these days with AI is the following, which is to worry about defensibility. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand, there are players which are throwing huge amount of money to develop new models, new capabilities, build computing infrastructure, which is something which is unbelievably huge. So the challenge that you could be working on something which in 3 months is going to be one line of code on a new API for a new model.
Mm.
It's something that I experienced with the team when I developed this AI for learning Torah. And what we started working with, we used specific technology called RAG that was a very strong fit to reduce the hallucination and even to be able to say whether it was whether the question we're being asked into this model is a question where we have element of information or not. Nowadays, if you look at the capabilities of the new models, a lot of these things which we build are now built in. So the challenge for the startup is not only to find a problem, which is the classic challenge, it's to find a problem where the tech that they are going to be developing is defensible. And in other words, this is this is one thing that we work with a lot of the startup. When the startups start thinking about this, then they start thinking, can my reasoning be better? Can I actually get a head start because I want to be integrated into a number of back office? Do I have my own unique data? And I think this is something which is really important. The other thing that I want to say is that we have some time to remind people and users that AI is based on statistical model. So some of these models are unbelievably powerful and complex. I also would probably add that we have some sense for how these models works, but they remain black boxes. I would encourage everyone to read the famous paper written in 2017 called Attention is All You Need, which is the one that created the transformer model, which is the T of ChatGPT. I've read it many times, and I don't think I get all of it. It probably talks more about me than about the text. But we have to realize one thing, which is that these platforms and these tools are statistical. So they can still make a couple of mistakes. So you have some guys which go into the newspaper and says, oh, it's making a mistake and so on. I'm so smart because I'm able to find the mistake and so on. And I think they are missing the point. But the good startup that really are able to think and take this into account, they introduce in a way what I would call the human into an AI application. So I want to come back to a couple of ideas. So I told you about One Tutor. And One Tutor started from the idea that there are not enough good tutors able to help the students. There's one startup that we've worked with called Ocumeda, wonderful startup, and they installed retina scan machines at places like Filman where you can get your glasses done. And for 50 €, they would do a retina scan, send it to a telemedicine where specialists could analyze if you have a glaucoma or not. As they did, they started developing their own data, and of course they were able to use this to develop a system to be able to use AI and do automatic detection of glaucoma. Now, the other thing that I think they did, which is really very, very smart, is that they realized that they could have something which would have a certain percentage of capabilities, but that is not 100%. And in a certain way, that being sure that you detect the disease or you say it's okay is something which is important. So that they find 3 levels. One is green, everything is okay. The other one, come in 1 year. And the other one is not, you have a problem. The other one is go and see a doctor, go and see a specialist. And in a way, the value that this has is that there's not enough people doing this sort of analysis. The ability to start easily generating such analysis for many, many people is something which is important for everyone's health. But then they realize that what they do is that in a way, they treat these volumes, they do something like a triage, and they are able to say to the doctors, these are the important cases. They are doing a sort of pre-qualification. What I like with this is that it's a big market. They are developing defensible, unique technology, and they also are able to integrate the technology and the value to all the actors of the value chain in this domain in a way which means that they compensate for the fact that it is statistical. I'm very impressed. They are doing really well. And, we are in Munich. They are world class. They are absolutely world class. I'm very impressed with these guys. I think this is a very strong example of what many startups should be doing.
Awesome.
I hope they are listening to this podcast.
Yes.
Benedict, I hope you're listening to this.
Good
I'm very
job,
impressed
Benedict.
with what you guys are doing.
Awesome. So let's stay a little bit on that, creating that moat. They call it moat. Usually, I like the picture because there's a Magic the Gathering card. I play this game and it's called Moat. So I know what a moat is. How do you create a moat around your business? Yeah, you talked about it, like the defensibility. Like, can another model just put us out of business in 2 months? How do you guys approach this, working with the startups to create this defensibility?
So the number one moat in AI, which I can think of, is about the data.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, Ocumedia has generated their own data, and this is something that is really important. So whenever I work with a startup, the question that I ask them is whether they are keeping the data, they are whether the fact of working more and more with more data is something which is going to give them competitive advantage. And it is something that I think usually works well. When you work with startup and they understand this, then soon they realize they got to make sure they can have their data, that if they have privacy issue, they use federated learning abilities. But very early on, getting startup to be thinking about the defensibility and the data is very, very important. I probably want to stay on this 1 minute. I don't know if you read, but this morning, Disney and another content provider sued Midjourney because they are saying that they are huge property theft, intellectual property theft. Everyone knows who read the New York Times that OpenAI has been suing, and Microsoft had been sued by the New York Times because they believe that they've been training their data without asking the question. And I think that 2 weeks ago, Reddit sued Anthropic for training, it's not by accessing the data in a way which was unauthorized. So it's no surprise that you got 3 such cases. I really think that these days there is a need. I'm not a big fan of regulation. I'm an entrepreneur. But here right now, there is definitely a need to make sure that data protection is being respected beyond the classic fair use, which is what people have been doing. And it's very important not only for AI as a whole, but also for all the guys which are developing intellectual property and content. And it's very important for the startup, which are also starting to develop their data. So that, to me, is a key enabler. And we are in Europe where, rightly or wrongly, a number of people associate Europe in AI with the EU AI Act, which is something that I don't think is so important. But having a framework to protect the data so that you can actually really ensure that startups have defensibility, that is something which is definitely very important. So back to your question, how do we get defensibility for startup? We first make sure that they understand the need to think about this from day one. And the best defensibility they can get is about the data.
And you mentioned this humanness into the process. Maybe there's also some defensibility there too.
In a way, this is what I would describe as defensibility via distribution. And if you understand that you have to find something which works for everyone and where AI is really adding a number of value, then you have to understand where you need the human to come in. And it's defining the business value. And this is realizing that this is how you make something which not only works for all the constituents, but also can work well in terms of, capabilities and so on. Once again, you're not saying my AI is going to work every time. It can do all these processes, all these agents can work together, but you can say it can do a huge amount of what used to be, complex analysis and so on, which couldn't be done even because we didn't have this statistical tool. and you still keep the human side so that the human can validate the results. And as I mean, we've discussed, you and I, when we are writing something, we use AI not to write this thing, but to actually make sure that there's no spelling mistake, that the orthography is clear, that the text is readable. But we proofread what we are being handed by the AI. So we know that the systems are statistical systems, and we use them as a productivity tool. But we don't take this and we just apply this exactly as this is. And this is why these days learning how to use these tools is something which is really very, very important. Learning, once we have micro classes which are done for the other venture lab startup, and we have to do classes on how you do effective prompting.
Yeah,
and it's something that it just happened that we do quite a lot of prompting because of what we do, and we formalize this, and it's of huge value for non-AI startup because it gives them huge amount of productivity.
By the way, easy hack for prompting. So the first prompt you give AI is say, please create a detailed prompt guide for a specific target group, like for me as a startup founder. Then it creates the prompt guide. Then you say, I want to create a prompt around this and this. Please use the guide to create a really good prompt. Then it creates a really good prompt. And then you take another chat and say, please create a prompt evaluation guide for startup founders. And then you give that evaluation guide, hey, here's my prompt. Please evaluate that prompt.
100%.
And you get a really good prompt.
100%. I mean, this is something where, once again, if you learn how to use these to your advantage, if you invest in these tools, then you really get a lot of return out of this. I'm really impressed with this.
Let me ask you this. Is it, I mean, you're in the AI venture labs, that's your domain, but obviously there's other startups that don't have AI in their name and so on. But would you say any startup needs to leverage AI at this point? Not maybe necessarily in their what their product is, but definitely in how they do business. Is there business excellence without AI these days?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. In other words, the mandate that we have in my venture lab is not only to help the AI startup which come and knock at our door, but it is to AI enable other venture labs. And let me give you an example of something that I'm working with, which was actually kicked off with my sister. So my sister in France runs the biggest research foundation for mental health research. It's called Fondation Fondamentale. And what she has been working on is a set of research for quite a while to be able to understand what are the biological elements which are going to explain why certain people will have mental health affection. Mm-hmm. What she has been doing in the last years is that she's been working to create centers in France which could be not only treating patients, but also start gathering data. And she has right now developed a very, very comprehensive data set. For each patient, there's something like 4,000 records. These records are not necessarily a questionnaire, but they could be also multimodal, MRI, blood sample, and so on. And she's working right now with people in Munich to be able to replicate the same structure and to be able to develop a unique data set which could be done in multiple countries. The UK also is coming. And what we discussed with the professors of the University of TUM, at the Medical Research Institute, the MRI, and people at the Ludwig Maximilian University, the LMU, is to actually use AI capabilities on this data set. Mm-hmm. And the project is actually making a reality of something known as precision psychiatry, which is that you really look for every type of mental health affliction, and you try to develop very precise biological-based marker which explain certain affection. Mm-hmm. Early results are very, very powerful, but we are barely starting. So I'm really, I hope that we're going to be working very, very soon on having a cross-country platform in between Germany, France, and the UK, having this data being made available, and then having AI researchers and psychiatrists working together, one with the AI expertise, the other one with the medical expertise, and seeing how they can use AI to validate which element is triggering which trigger. That is the path to having improved treatment for this disease, and it's all AI enabled. And that's one example. We have other examples where we work very closely with other venture labs, and there are two of them which I like to quote. We have a legal venture lab, and with Moritz and Alex, my colleagues, we very often co-help and sponsor startup which have an AI application. And they come with the domain expertise. We look at these from the AI expertise. We look at these very, very significantly. And the other one, which we are doing similar things as well, is with my colleague from Deutscher from the Aerospace Venture Lab, which has the responsibility of looking at dual use project. And there are a lot of ways that AI is impacting these. So back to your question, AI is really everywhere. Yeah. And we are back to the fact that it's not only very powerful, but that everyone has used this. Yeah. So everyone understands they have to start moving to AI. If you look at 27, when Jobs announced the iPhone, I don't think that you would have had in every board meeting of every company the fact that they needed to develop an application to be on the phone. Whereas nowadays, this is going at a speed which is unbelievable.
Yeah. And I would like to challenge everyone to, I'm using AI because I prompt ChatGPT every now and then, please write that email. That's not what we're talking about maybe in the very short run, but in the real sense, it's leveraging to get results. You're not playing around with it. You want to get results. You want to get real productivity using AI.
You need to try, you need to test, you need to also keep updated because the speed with which new things are happening is unbelievable. And you probably also need to understand enough how these things are working. It's use AI to understand how AI is working if you don't have the time to read complex academic papers. But you need to have a sense for what is a diffusion model, what is a transformer model, what could be the limitation, why data would have certain bias, how models are trained, how you can put in place guardrail. You need to understand this so that you can use this, and I come back to the example of the prompt that you described, you can use this to your best. You don't want to become specialist, but you don't want to be only passive user. Yeah. You want to understand a little bit how this works, to be able to make the most out of it. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And that, like you talked about this earlier, the continuous learning. And I was listening to this conversation, and that's when I realized that. So back in the days, I can almost say, you were going to university and you learned something. Like, I did an MBA, so it was very general anyways, but many people learned something specific. And then they went out into the world and practiced what they learned in university for the rest of their lives, basically. And that has changed so completely, right? And so that means like they didn't have to continuously learn a little bit, yes, on the job, but not in a big way. And I think the AI future holds for us that we really constantly have to continuously learn, because everything is changing all the time, and you cannot learn something really and know it's going to be relevant in 5 years, other than very basics, other than learning, for example. You know that it's going to be relevant to be able to learn in 5 years and 10 years.
I think what you are saying is really important. Let me stay with this 1 second. The way technology evolves has one impact. the parental life of hard technical skill is very short. I have a personal story, which is that I was not trained as a software engineer. I was trained as an electronics engineer, and I did my military service. During 12 months, I was out of I was not working in the industry. I was a soldier, and during this time, what was my very hard skill, which was analog electronics, became obsolete or not as relevant as it was, because Japanese semiconductor companies started coming with high volume, low cost digital components. What happens is that I go and do a number of interviews with several companies. They ask me a problem, so I explain how I would solve the problem using classical method. They said, that's fine. How would you do this with digital component? And I was dry. So this is why I went to software. It was a bit of a shock. And like everything which is a shock, there's a bit of, healthy realization of how the world works. And what I realize is that your hard skills have a limited lifetime. So it's very important to do two things. One is to stay updated. Take your example, when you and I met, I thought you were a blockchain specialist.
Yeah.
And now when I speak with you, you are an AI specialist, as well as a branding specialist and a great golfer. But in other words, you need to keep updated, and it's really very important. But the other thing, and we are back to the first question that you asked about being nice as a founder, you have to develop soft skills.
Yeah.
And the founders that do well, it's funny how everything is tying back.
I know.
The founders which do well are those which quickly develop soft skills. Speaking in public, listening to someone, building a team, aligning the teams. These are not hard skills, but these are skills that you develop very, very fast when you have practical work and you start being successful. And the very good founders, they develop these soft skills. And it starts by realizing that you don't define yourself by the hard skill that you have. You define yourself by trying to develop a very broad set of skills. So these are the good founders.
Beautiful, beautiful. Bring it all full circle. And I want to come to a closing questions maybe. And so my personal philosophy is to live a big life. I think we've only have this one life, at least that we know of. And so you might as well make it big, like go full and have this full human experience. And so I'm asking you, what does that mean for a startup in maybe Munich, Germany, where we are? Because I studied in the US, and there's go big, go home, like everything is very big. You think very big, and what does going big, like, what would you like to pass on to maybe startups here and entrepreneurs in general to think big, to go big? What does big life mean for a startup?
I would need to think, but one element which I'm seeing from even successful startup, which could be 3, 4, 5 years old, is not only that they are still alive and they are doing well. What I'm seeing is that they are helping others. So if you take several of the startups that I have mentioned, from time to time, I ask if they could take 1 hour of their busy time and talk to another founders. And it's no surprise, the guys which are good, they will always find the time. So thinking big for a startup is saying, I want to have an impact.
Yeah.
You don't want necessarily the impact to be measured in monetary revenue, number of clicks, number of tokens, and so on, but it's having an impact. And, at some stage one day, they will ask me to retire and leave the venture lab. And I hope that the startup that I'm working with right now will continue what I'm doing and help other startups. That is success.
Beautiful answer. What's big life for you? What means? I mean, I think you're living it. What does that mean for you to live a big life, to live a full life?
So look, right now I feel that I have an amazing family, that I've run a company which may not be Microsoft or OpenAI, but at least has been able to do a number of things. So I was really happy to do this, and what I'm doing at my age, which is being to this great environment where we can help others get things moving and have an impact, is something which is really a great source of satisfaction. So I don't know if I would define what this would have been with the same criteria when I was coming to university or where I were starting a family, but at this stage where I am, being in this extremely remarkable environment, which is this the Technical University of Munich, and working with founders who are unbelievably dynamic and being able to make sure that we can support them and have an impact and helping them, I can't think of a better way of using my days.
Awesome. And it is really their pleasure. I mean, the work you do, really, I can see it up close. I have to thank you for everyone else, what you're doing there. And it comes from such a beautiful place, as you just described, because you want to pass it on. You've done many things already. Thank you so much. For sure.
So there are many rabbis who've tried to understand what meaning to give to the following story. So Moses took the Israelite during 40 years until they were able to go to the promised land, the land of Canaan. And what happened is that when they arrive, God takes Moses, tells him that this is going to be great. It's a land of milk and honey, but tells him, by the way, you're going to die. You're not going to make it. And for many people, this is seen as something sad. It's an interpretation that there was a moment at Meribah where Moses doubted doubted God. So there are a lot of interpretation, but there's an interpretation which is that you always work for the next generation. So you can do the unbelievably complex, fabulous things of taking the Jews out of Egypt and taking them through the desert and so on. Ultimately, you always work for the next generation. I feel the same with the student. I feel the same with my family. And it is, I think, the way of having, a meaningful life.
Absolutely nothing to add. Antoine, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
So I work at the university. If you have a startup, if you're affiliated with TUM, come and have coffee with me and let's discuss.
And they find you on LinkedIn?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, quite easily. Thank you so much for coming on for the second time. Much appreciated. Wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here, Bernhard.
Awesome. We did it. It was beautiful.
Nice.
Thank you. Really good.